What if the key to creating new things in life is to give up what you're good at? I'm very afraid. I started 4 businesses. The games company is like the one that, have been going on for like 13 years now. The others failed. We've built like hundreds of games over the years, and only a few got launched, and 3 of them became multi-million IP successes. I faced like tons of very high obstacles like burnout and learning how to manage people and learning how to manage myself. And you have to define what is the game that you're playing. My game is not being a successful businesswoman. It's probably not becoming a super successful musician. My game is deeper than that, is more about, but I never talked about this before. I have days that I wake up and I'm like, I'm gonna paint half of my hair white. And I don't do that because I was like, oh my God, really?
What are you afraid of?
What I have created so far is still not good enough. It's the most vulnerable I've ever been. Oh shit, I'm gonna get emotional.
Welcome. I've been so excited to chat to you for a while, actually. Always found that you have this electric energy, which is very infectious, and I feel you always match my energy whenever I bring
That's
this
true.
electricity. But I won't do you justice by doing your introduction, so I'd love for you to tell us who you are and what people should know about you at this stage of life.
You borrowed my word, energizer.
Nice.
Who I am is such a difficult thing to say in a few words, right? Because I feel I've been very different beings in very different moments of my life. And in essence, I would describe myself as someone who's hyper curious about life, very enthusiastic about connecting with people and going deep into conversations, and everything else about work, right? I'm an entrepreneur, an artist, an investor, creator, an NED, all those labels, they are there. But I think if I go back to the essence, is someone who's always looking for the right emotion at the right time, with the right connection, with the right people. And that deeply believe that, one, anything is possible if you really bring your heart to it, as cheesy as it sounds. And two, through these deep connections with others and emotional connections with others is where creation starts.
Creation of what?
Anything you want to create. So, it could be a business, it could be a song, which is the moment of my life right now. It could be a drawing, it could be, I don't know, maybe a book or something you're going to write today as you're journaling. Anything that comes out of you as something new to the world is something that only you in that moment can make that work, nobody else. And I don't think you do that in isolation. You do that because you are surrounded by the right people in the right environment that triggers that emotion in you.
I have this picture of like this hermit artist who's there, like someone who's like writing their book, like lock themselves in a shed in their garden and they just like write, and then they produce this book. Or the same with like an artist, like you have your studio here. I kind of see someone sitting in their bedroom just like creating art themselves. With this in mind, is that something that you think is like, what do you think is hindered there that you can only get when you have other people connecting?
I think there are 2 stages of this creation process, right? There's the moment that you take it in and you're gaining stimulus. And the stimulus could be a dream. And I I never dreamed of being on my own. I always dreamed of, something in relation to me. It could be, a situation. And I have a lot of crazy dreams, right? Even when I dream that I'm flying, I'm eventually meeting somewhere at the end of the flight, right? So it's like, I don't know if people can dream that they are completely on their own. But anyway, that would be a good thing to ask. So even when you dream, you're connecting to something else that is beyond yourself. And when you go and write about a dream, you are in your world, right? So that's why I'm kind of creating this distinction. So, and if you're gonna write a song or start a business, to me, it's very important that I have the stimulus of talking to other people, of sharing my ideas, of gaining, elements from the environment. I remember when we were during the lockdown, that's the bit that I missed most. Is not that I didn't miss having FOMO. That was very good. I felt very quiet and very present because there isn't much going on. But I did miss kind of the hello that someone who's serving me coffee would give to me, the smile when you go to Pret and buy something, or the Uber driver that takes you somewhere and you think it's an odd person, like everything that is like the oddities of situational things that you have in your world are stimulus for your creation. And then you have the other moment that you actually, at least for me, I do like to start things from scratch on my own. So when I'm writing songs or when I'm creating a business plan for a new business or a new podcast, I need that space to write things down and kind of put things out. But that would never happen if there wasn't a stimulus.
And that stimulus is uniquely other people? Or do you pull that stimulus from lots of different areas?
I pull from a lot of different things, but it's all relationships. Even if it's a relationship with a tree, that I just admired when I went to the park. Mm. What I mean about relationship is about relationship with somebody else, with something alive, with a tree. It could be anything, right? You walk in the park and suddenly you start admiring the tree, or you start cloud watching, which I love, by the way. So I find myself cloud watching a lot, and observing the movement of the clouds and the wind and etc. That is a relationship with something else that is, there is an exchange there. And through that exchange, it triggers certain emotions in me, and it triggers something else that allows me to create.
Mm. So then how do you define a relationship? What needs to be there for there to be a relationship between you and a tree, a cloud, a person, something else?
Couple of things. Presence, right? Like being able to appreciate that at that moment, as opposed to being distracted on social media or like doing 10 things at the same time, which we all tend to do. So having like that kind of deep presence within that moment of a conversation with the clouds, of a conversation in your dream, of a conversation with a real person, of a conversation with your dog, right?
Yeah.
So being there when that is happening, I think that's fundamental. And allowing those things to trigger emotions in you. Mm. To me, that's super key. And I'm not going to say to you that I've been doing this my whole life. It's something that I have been purposely working on and wanting to master, is to be able to allow those things to provoke certain emotions that might be ugly. It might be love, but it might be anger. It might be sadness, and all of those emotions, they allow you to become more of your artistic self. And I know that, I have these two sides of my brain, that it's very artistic, but it's another side that is very kind of, business-oriented, businesswoman, which I learned from my mom, and very much of a doer. But I think, a lot of the times in the workspace, you learn how to suppress your emotions, because that's what businesses need, right? You don't need highly emotional people in the workplace all the time, right? Because otherwise things, you don't have productivity, and it might create unnecessary conflict. But I think there is a need for, when you're creating something, when you're brainstorming a new product, when you're brainstorming a new campaign, when you are creating something new, when you're creating a game, like the first moments that we're creating a game in my games company is like, we need the emotions there. We need the enthusiasm, we need the anger, we need the conflict. We need, no, but I don't like this. No, wait. But that character should not, do that thing inside the game, or the way that this game is going to work out, the reason why people are going to connect emotionally is because of X, not Y. And if you don't feel emotions, and if you don't exchange on the emotional level with your teammates, you're not going to create a game or a product or a song or anything that actually connects with other people.
That's so beautiful, because ultimately anything we produce for customers is also a relationship, and we're trying to induce some sort of emotion in an experience or anytime they're consuming whatever we're producing.
Yeah.
So then how do you define the boundaries for where emotions are constructive versus not constructive in a business or work context?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not going to say that I have, all the answers. I believe, is it Disney or Pixar wrote the book Creativity?
Yeah,
right?
so Pixar.
And they talk about the 2 rooms. Do you remember that thing?
I don't remember the 2 rooms,
Okay.
no.
So I'll
explain to me what you remember.
Okay. So this book written by Pixar called Creativity, they talk about, at Pixar, they having 2 different rooms. They have the room for imagination to flow, and they have the room of the editors. So when you are in that room for creation to happen, there's no editing. Everything goes, everything flows, and that's it, right? And then after that, you have a moment that you can go to a room and say, okay, now let's bring the logic, bring the structure. If you take this concept in your life for whatever you're creating, or in your day-to-day at work, like this time is for creativity to flow. There's no editor. Don't allow the editor and the logic kind of invade the emotions.
So then when you have like that example works really well when it's something like Pixar, when like you have to be creative. I suppose so many jobs, like with startups, let's say, there isn't like a very clear, this is the creative process time, or like this is where we need to come up with loads of ideas. And so are there any other, like having an environment is amazing. Is there like a time of day, or is there like specific tasks which lend themselves towards this split between the creative side and the sort of more rational editing side? If I was a founder starting a business today, without knowing what that business is, let's say, how are we thinking about this process?
I think it's all about intentionality, right? It's I remember, so I started 4 businesses, and different ways, different times, different subjects. And of course, Bossa Studios is the games company, is like the one that, have been going on for like almost 14 years now. The others failed. But I think I learned a lot along the way with the other businesses of not allowing myself to go into doing mode before we actually created something, went through the creation of what is this product. One is much cheaper because you can test very cheaply a product that is not yet built with technology, right? Or you haven't, raised money or got a lot of people in your payroll. So it's much cheaper for you to iterate on an idea level and paper level and, talking to people, interviewing in a way to understand their needs and their desires and their wants and their aspirations, right? that is a key thing. So, which I think it's on the creation side of things. It's a way for you to understand the environment where your product's going to be living, right? And tell me if I'm getting too conceptual here, and then in games, so for our company in particular, the way that we make games is by doing game jams. So we have, a lot of people in the company getting together, and we spend like days jamming, just like musicians do. So the whole purpose of those days is to get together with your colleagues and come up with a game. And I mean, there are not many rules. The rules is that, at the end of the week, you should have a prototype that is playable, at least a little bit playable, right? And you shouldn't do it on your own. You should pair with at least one person to make that game. And I think that kind of allowing the creativity to flow in that moment of the initiation of a new product is very important. How do you do this in like a lot of the companies? I mean, I've done like talks and workshops in large companies, and they all eventually struggle with that, and they call it innovation, right? So what we call it's, what founders do all the time, which is, coming up with ideas, solving problems. For large organizations is that we need more innovation in our company. And I think over time, a lot of large organizations forget that moment of allowing things to brew and creativity to flow. And that's why, Pixar and Disney still, one of the most amazing entertainment companies in the world, because they're still keeping that element of now it's all about imagination.
I'm reminded of something you said elsewhere, which is that founders have to be artists and scientists, which I think sums us up perfectly. So sticking with the artistic, creative side, are there any other factors that contribute to a really strong creative process?
That's a good question. From my experience, is presence. We talked about stimulus before, right? But I think it's allowing enough presence in the moment of creation, and so that your mind and your body becomes this vessel of something that is going on in the air, And a lot of artists talk about this, something like another dimension, that it's somewhere here or somewhere there, and then you kind of suddenly catches you. I think Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this, kind of incorporating something that comes to her and then use her as a vessel to write. I think a lot of artists talk about this in different ways, right? But to me, it's this feeling of the presence after you have the stimulus, and the allowance of you not being in your ego. That is when, you allow yourself to catch a wave of idea or creativity or observation of the world. And the reason why I'm kind of broadening that up is that if I look at myself as a singer-songwriter, which is the moment of my life right now that I'm embarking on that, like I'm spending a lot of time on this, it's much more, it requires me to tap into my emotions much more, and to think about this moment of, I'm in this river and I'm water, and something's gonna go somewhere, and I need to be there to catch that feeling, right? Because songwriting is all about the feeling. Even if you're making electronic music, right? I'm making electro bossa. So it's bossa nova fusion with electronic music. And even when I'm on Ableton making beats, there's something that needs to come from me that just suddenly feels like I just chose the right instrument for that kind of chord progression. So if I look at very artistic side of it, it's much more philosophical. if I look at the business side of it, like with my other brain as an entrepreneur, artist, scientific, it's about creating the right environment so that people in your organization are able to be present and are able to bring their authentic selves. There's more structure there, right? You need that.
Almost being scientific about the artistic process.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm assuming what people need to be present with a creative process is different per person. And so that then comes down to having conversations with people to understand what's unique for them and what they need, or is there something that are quite general? Like we have this space within Pixar, and so you can have like areas which you can define as being the creative space versus the scientific space.
I think both, right? You have to provoke that. So, for instance, with my games company with Bossa, I say Bossa and then now it's like Bossa Nova. Is it Bossa Nova or is Bossa your games company? It's Bossa. I'm obsessed with Bossa. Bossa Nova and Bossa, my games company. So, with Bossa is, we found a way to cater for their creativity by jamming before we come up with games, right? And then we have a lot of games. We've built like hundreds of games over the years, and only a few got launched, and 3 of them became multi-million IP successes. So like there's this kind of numbers game for you to get there. So it's much more structured. But I think on the hiring side is very key as well. So a lot of the people, when we're hiring, we look at people who are T-shaped. T-shaped people are people who have a speciality in one thing. So let's say they are a developer, they are a game developer, they're a coder, but they are broad. The top of the T is quite broad. So we have developers who are also musicians, who are also drone aficionados. One of them, he actually has a YouTube channel just about drones, and he's now driving like super crazy stuff with drones now and filming everything. So the videos are pretty amazing. He's getting so much better at that. So anyway, you have people who have one specialty, but they're so broad on their interests that they actually bring this to work, So when those people are jamming, if they're a coder or if they're an artist, they're, drawing a world or whatever, they're actually also thinking about the other elements. They might be thinking about music if they play the guitar in their spare time, right? Or they might be thinking about the psychology of the game design or the game loops because they're very much into psychology. So you have to hire people who are T-shaped people so that they naturally bring this to your team.
And that sounds like what you summarize as being multi, right?
I think being multi is more, if I think of myself as being a multi, and funnily enough that you're saying that I didn't describe myself as a multi, right? When I started talking.
You didn't.
That's really interesting.
It is.
Wow. It didn't come from my heart anymore. Maybe I'm not multi anymore. No, because what I describe as a multi, you don't necessarily have one deep specialism. I don't feel I'm a specialist in anything. I feel that I know a lot about games, game making, and launching games and building a games company as I've been doing. And that helps me a lot with keynote speeches that I do, consulting work and working as a venture partner with a VC firm. So all of those things, even angel investing in games companies. So that kind of knowledge of games by building a games company helped me to spread that into multiple areas, right? But I don't think I'm a game specialist, funnily enough.
Well, I suppose you've gone deep. You have our T shape, and maybe someone who's a game developer goes really deep, all the way down to the bottom, and maybe you've gone halfway with game design, but then you've also gone halfway with company building, and you've also gone halfway with content creation or designing songs.
Exactly. I think that's a very good way to put that. It's like maybe the way that my brain works is less about, it's less about the tea, but it's more about, I don't know, what would be like another, I don't know, like something, a table or like something that has multiple pillars.
Yeah.
And actually each pillar goes, some go very shallow, some go really, really down. And again, it's like, I'm not a specialist in games, but I've become pretty good at building businesses through successes and failures, right? I wouldn't be able to like, start and code a game on my own, or like, start a whole games company now, especially because I wouldn't want to. But, I think I'm more passionate about building businesses and building products than building games. Does it make sense? So maybe the business side of my brain is a deeper one than the games. But having said that, the connections that you build by going deep or shallow in many different areas allows you so much to cross-pollinate and to combine all those things, and suddenly you create a new leg just by combining everything. And I'll give you an example. Now that I've been investing, being a singer-songwriter, performer, producer, etc., I've done a lot of open mics, and I sang, I haven't sang my original songs yet, but I sang a lot of covers. I'll be ready soon.
And next on the mic is Better Lucca with her new single.
So I think compared to people who have started in this journey 2 years ago, I'm literally a baby, right? A baby singer-songwriter, right? I know nothing compared to most amazing musicians out there. So, but I'm much more able to go on stage and sing than 99% of people who have been doing this for 2 years. And the reason why is because I have been on stage delivering keynote speeches. And same thing with social media, right? The reason why I'm able to document my journey, and after 2 years of fiddling around and kind of experimenting with a lot of stuff with music, I have over 300 videos on my phone that can be repurposed for social media so that I can start building my fan base. So like I would have not done that in just 2 years of the journey of throwing myself into singer-songwriter if I hadn't done all the other 10 things that I've done in my life. And I think people sometimes disregard that, oh, you're a dabbler, maybe you just, you go in and out, and maybe you have ADHD or whatever. It's not like that. It's actually following your curiosity, following your heart, following your emotions, and doing what is right for you at that moment in time, what feels that it's energizing you. Because if you feel energized, you energize others. If you energize others, you're going to create something new. Something good is going to come out of that. I have no doubt.
But I'm assuming there's still a balance, right? There's still, with every path we go down, there are obstacles. And that's usually when we come to the obstacles, we think, oh, God, I really don't want to do this anymore. Like, my heart could be telling me that actually I want to go do this other thing, and not push through that obstacle and stick at it, because there's a lot of benefit as well that comes with just staying in the game longer.
Yeah.
Like doing the number of reps, like it's the same with content creators. There's a direct correlation between how many, let's say, videos you put out, whether it goes viral or not. There's a direct correlation between how successful a business is to how many years it's been running. So how do you know when to push through, and how do you know when to go in a different direction?
I love that you talked about staying in the game, because I 1000% believe in staying in the game. That's That's one of the mantras of my life. Just make sure you stay in the game. What is the game that you play? For me, staying in the game doesn't mean that I'm gonna just do my podcast forever. And for some people, it might be, right? Or for some people, it might be their business. You know, like, I'm gonna stick to this business for like 20 years, whatever, commitment. And if I exit halfway through, I'm great, but I'm 100% committed. So yes, there's going to be obstacles, and I wouldn't say to you that obstacles are easy for me to overcome. Of course, it's difficult, like for everybody, right? So I face like tons of very high obstacles that put me in a very difficult position, like burnout and like learning how to manage people and learning how to manage myself and my emotions and etc. over time, right? So I think a lot of the times as an entrepreneur is the inner game that you need to master so that you can actually play the outer game. So I'm not diminishing the obstacles. You have to define what is the game that you're playing. Or you have to trust that there's something about your decision making that it's leading you to the right game for you to play. My game is not being a successful businesswoman. My game is not building a successful games company. My game is probably not becoming a super successful musician. I think my game is deeper than that, is more about creation and connection and energy. And, you know, through all those things that I do, I think I bring that to people by being on stage, by collaborating, by building businesses.
This always comes up in these sorts of conversations for me. It's always the infinite versus the finite game. The infinite game, all these things you can't complete, being creative or connecting or inspiring people. Like, it's just something continuous.
I think I never, maybe the way they articulated that was very messy, but I never talked about this before like this. So it's the first time that I'm kind of, I'm playing a game, but it's a different game to what probably people think I am playing. Yeah, thank you for that.
Or the game that you think you've been playing?
No, I think it's a feeling. I feel everything is connected, but I could never eloquently talk about that apart from saying being a multi. That's probably the closest.
I feel it's this separation between labels that people can understand, like you are an entrepreneur or you are a musician.
Yeah.
Like that, those are all labels. Whereas actually it's taking a step back from the labels and just saying, I feel energized, I feel connected, I feel curious.
Yeah. And you know what, on that point, you know, something I've been thinking a lot is that, like, I've talked a lot about like unfair advantage as individuals, right? Because we have this term in startups that you have to find your unfair advantage as a business so that you can win the game, right? That you want to win. But I think it's highly applicable to individuals, right? You have to find your own unfair advantage. And I happen to even like do a course on LinkedIn about that, right? Find your unfair advantage. But my point is that I think very often your biggest weakness is your unfair advantage. And I'll tell you why. When I came to the UK 17 years ago, I couldn't speak a word in English. And I was very naive. I was like, came with my partner. We're like, okay, we're going to go there. We had a bet, right? So the first one who got the job, the other one would follow. So we were like looking for jobs outside of Brazil. And then he got the job first. I lost the bet and I had to follow him. And then I was like, oh, of course, everything's going to be amazing. Of course not. I couldn't speak English, and I couldn't talk to, I couldn't order like a glass of wine at the local pub, right? And it was a really, really, really tough moment because, I almost went back because it was like, okay, reality is very different to my naive self. And I got very depressed for like 6 months. It was like, horrible moment. And eventually got a job and then kind of got back to my older self and learned English, of course, right? So I spent like 6 months in a full-time English course. I always thought that communication was my weakness. That's, in the back of my mind. I would never be able to eloquently talk about anything like someone who was born here would be able to. Probably not the same way, because through everything that I've done, communication is involved. Through, building a business, hiring people, leading people, writing songs, writing speeches. Being a content creator, there's always about communication in my second language for the last 17 years. And that weakness probably became my unfair advantage because a lot of people would probably not put themselves into those situations if they thought that they were okay. I probably a little bit kamikaze was like, since I need to learn, I'm going to throw myself into this. And on the way there, I'm going to learn something and I'm going to become a better communicator, right? Yeah, long way to say that your weakness can be your unfair advantage.
I love that. And this leads into quite nicely a question I've been excited to ask you, which is generally around this concept of games and life and getting through difficult times, which is how can we make life more game-like? Specifically, these really challenging times.
I think it's about not taking it too seriously. When you are playing a good game, you become very resilient because you're going to fail so much. You know that. You're not going to kill the monster first time you're going to face the monster because the game was created for that, You need to prove yourself. You need to go there and do it again and again and again and again and again. And then once you pass that monster, you go to another level of the game. It's going to be a stronger monster. And then it's going to be more tricky for you to find your survival kits around the world, right? Every time you level up in a game, it gets harder. And every time that you level up, you fail multiple times. And I think if you look at life a little bit more like that, it's not that serious. And you're going to fail a bunch. And you enjoy the process of discovering who you are through that, I think it would be much more, in general, people would be happier. I learned a lot about failure from improv as well, because I've done a lot of improvisation classes and shows as well. I've done a little bit of everything. So improv it's that feeling that people will collectively win if they're having fun in that moment. But you can only feel that if you're very okay to fail. Because you don't know what story you're telling. You don't know. It's like you have a troupe of players that go on stage and create a scene. There's no text. Nobody rehearsed anything apart from knowing how to, deal with each other on stage. And you pick like a what, a who, and where. So, the audience would say, you are, I don't know, in the beach.
Well, let's give it a go.
Yeah, we can try it.
Yeah.
Do you want to try it?
Yeah.
We can try a whole thing here. So give me a place.
You spoke about the clouds. We're in the clouds.
Okay, so we're in the clouds. All right. And what is the relationship we have with each other?
We are forming water droplets.
Oh, wow. I love this.
Part of the cloud.
Part of the cloud, right? And then, okay, you go to the scene, you go to stage, and you're like, hey, have you seen what's going on with the clouds today?
I actually only just woke up. Tell me.
Like, the colors of the sky are mad.
Oh, wow.
And you know those droplets that we have to collect together to make sure that we build up for the rain for people in London to enjoy the rain every day. Like, they love enjoy the rain.
They love the rain. They do.
Like, oh my God. And
These
like
English
all of those
people.
colors, they're crazy people, aren't they?
Wow. So what is it? What made these colors? I've barely seen them before.
Yeah, it's like something's happening today with the sun that is, yeah, we probably need to talk to an astronomer or something. I know they're part of the team who's working, like the managing team of this area of the clouds, right? They have a consultant who's an astronomer. So we probably need to talk to them. But I think we're going to disappoint people in London today because we won't be able to make the droplets to make it rain.
God, I think we need to work harder. I think we need to go into our cloud innovation room.
Yes.
And we need to come up with some more ideas to make this rain more consistent.
Yes.
Because also, like, the sun really hurts. Like, it really stings.
I know it does.
And so I really just want to rain more often.
Yeah, and I know how you feel about that. Well, I mean, we've been working together for a long time, right?
That's true.
Yeah, it's been like lots of roadblocks on the way, but like, yeah, today is a special one. Gosh, I think it's a good idea to go to the room so we can brainstorm what we can do now, because I think your ideas will be super welcome.
And then at least we can have our heads up in the clouds and we can come up with something really magical. Amazing.
That was a very bonkers situation.
Yeah, I know. It's good fun, wasn't it?
It's good fun, yeah. Usually people would say something a little bit less creative in the audience. They were like, "You are in the beach. He's your dad," you know, like, and then you go and sing. But
I love that you brought in like cloud consultants, like that part of the business. I was like, there's a business in the clouds.
There's the whole business here to make it rain. But you know what I mean? It's like I think, you know, games teach you that, and there's like a lot of mainstream research which shows that gamers' brains are actually really evolved in terms of building resilience, problem solving, spatial awareness, cognitive skills, collaboration, because a lot of, you know, multiplayer games, you actually have to collaborate with others to achieve something. So there's a lot of elements that are in games that, of course, are created by humans, right? So, you know, go meta here. But that actually allows you to be super comfortable with failure. So if you look at life more like improv, which it is, you know, I don't know what's going to be the next word that I'm going to tell you right now. It's just coming. Nothing's planned. So if you think like that, nothing gets that serious. And if you think that, you know, when things are really hard, it's just because you probably leveled up. And then, you know, there's another big monster to fight.
I love that. When things get hard, it's because we've leveled up. I also heard recently from Ali Abdal. Do you know Ali?
Yeah.
Amazing content creator,
He's
amazing
incredible.
YouTuber. And he spoke about the key to productivity is making whatever you're doing fun.
Yeah.
If there's a task that seems really daunting, that seems really difficult or boring, the first question should be, how can I make this more fun?
Yeah.
So then translating this to startups and the business environment, where can we bring more gameplay into building companies? Let's say we're talking to founders, seed, Series A, that sort of stage. Where's somewhere that maybe you've brought in games into building a company?
Oh, that's a very tough question.
Or if you were starting a company now, maybe how would you design it with more games involved?
I think it's about experimentation. I think it's about not taking the decisions too seriously. So Jeff Bezos, he talks about the two decisions that you make. Mm-hmm. There's the decision that very likely you will be able to change. You know, it's like you go route A, and very easily you decide that A is not good enough. You're gonna go to B, right? And there are decisions that are really like there's no way back. And he talks about that majority of the decisions you make, 99%, are the first class, that they are reversible. So I think if I was starting a company again today, I would be way less attached to the product that I'm creating. I would be way less attached to even the team, because I would build the early team in a more like a let's date and see what happens, and be very like clear communication, very upfront. We're trying something out here, and if it doesn't work, then we probably swap each other. It's maybe that's not going to work out. You might go and do it yourself, or I do it myself, and then find other people to do it. Super hard to implement, right? But I would probably do that. I would probably go all the way experimentation. And I think, one industry that has done that a lot has been Hollywood, right? Filmmaking. It's like most people are freelancers. They're not employees of a company, especially on the creative side. So they basically, you have a director, a producer, a bunch of actors, and all of the people who are involved in making a film. They get together for a project that lasts 2-3 years, from like starting to finalizing and launching. And then they go away and do other things. And then eventually some of those people will connect again because they worked really well together. They like working with each other, right? So you see some actors that are always in Quentin Tarantino's movie or Woody Allen movies, because, it kind of works for them, right? So I would love to find a way to build companies more like this. It's super challenging, but if there is a way that Hollywood worked, there might be a way for other companies to make it work too.
Yeah, I suppose people look for security.
Yeah.
Especially when starting a company.
That's the challenge.
That is the challenge. Yeah, I'm trying to picture how this would work. And I completely agree. I think you should definitely date before getting married to someone, which is realistically you spend more time with the people that you work with than you do with pretty much anyone else. Yeah. And I've tried to implement that more in my company building journey, where I say cool, we'll just do a 3-month project together. At the end of it, then we'll have a proper conversation around whether we're actually going to work together. Yeah. And most of the time, we don't carry on working together. Right. And interestingly, the people that I've sort of got married to from the start, I probably wouldn't have picked again now looking back. So I think that's really powerful.
If you just look at planet Earth, and 8 billion people who live here, out of 8 billion people, there are I don't know how many zillions of combinations of people to get together and do stuff together, right? So the chances of you finding the right team in the first go are pretty low. And I think that's, what a lot of the times investment helps you as a startup. Because when you're bootstrapping, it can be very hard for you to stay in the game, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to work with the wrong people. You're going to make the wrong product. You're going to iterate a lot. And there's so much your bootstrap money can go, right? And I'm not kind of disregarding businesses that are, profitable from day one. A lot of business owners nowadays, especially nowadays, are okay, I'm going to be profitable from year one so that I never rely on investors. But I think in a way, the having investors allow you to make those mistakes a little bit more comfortably, knowing that, the process of making those mistakes will lead you to the win, right? And will lead you to stay in the game for that company for the long run.
At least having the right investors.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm talking about like more having enough money in the bank.
Yeah.
To do that. And I mean, most entrepreneurs, including myself, would never have enough money in the bank to sustain myself, a company of dozens of people for the long run, right? So, yeah.
I'd love to understand that relationship better, the founder-investor relationship. So you've been a founder you've had Bossa for 13, going on 14 years, and now venture partner at Octopus. How are you looking at this relationship between founder and investor? Because oftentimes it feels like there's a lot of pressure from the investors to like ship things, get things out the door. But it feels like founders are tense, like they suddenly have someone breathing down their neck. And that doesn't feel to me like the most conducive environment for failure and for experimenting and for making company building more game-like.
That's so interesting you say that, because I worked in corporate environment for a long time. I mean, corporate in a TV broadcasting in Brazil. I say corporate because they're like a massive company, 5,000 people company and stuff. So yeah, it was kind of large organization, right? With a lot of processes and stuff, even though it was, TV broadcaster. And then here, I worked at Nokia before starting Bossa. And the interesting thing is that when I compare my time in a corporation versus being a founder, it's like the level of freedom that you have as a founder is like insanely high. It's like it's all about where you compare with, right? Like, yeah, people say, oh, but then I have the investors, I'm very tense, I cannot make mistakes, and etc. Try to work in a corporate environment. You're gonna be 10 times tenser. Does this word exist? Tenser.
It can do.
You're gonna be 10 times more tense if you work in a corporation, if you have a boss, if you have like a whole set of processes that you have no control of, but you have to follow because you're an employee, right? And that to me is lack of freedom, much more than the, maybe lack of freedom with investors. And of course, like there's reporting things, it's like board meetings, everything is very draining, and you want to have the right investors who support you, who are not creating conflict, who are not, that you're able to say, hey, I understand your point, but I do believe that the company should do this as opposed to what you're saying, right? And sometimes just compromise and say, okay, if you think this is the right thing, let me have a think, and maybe I'm going to go that direction. So there's a lot of, negotiation, and I hate the word compromise, by the way, because I think compromise is something in between. But it's like, someone wants A, another person wants B, let's come up with C solution, right? So to me, it's like that's kind of that dynamic that you should have with investors. But also, it's so important to find the best ones. One of my companies that failed, I made the wrong choice of investors. And they were not helpful. They were not from the industry I was building the business on. And they had no further connections with the rest of the investment ecosystem, especially here in the UK. And when I tried to raise a bigger round, I couldn't, because investors were like, well, but who are those investors that you got in your pre-seed? Like, don't know them, don't trust them. I got stuck, So even that perspective is like important for you to have, which I learned as an entrepreneur. But I think now that I've been doing the venture partner thing for 2 years and seeing a lot on the other side, I think there are a lot of nuances to this conversation, like good investors very likely have all the intention to get you to succeed, that's what they want. They want the most companies succeed in their portfolio, the better they are, the better they do, the more chances they're going to raise another fund in the next, because I'm not going to go into the details of VCs, right? But they usually raise multiple funds to invest in startups. But if they succeed with, let's say, fund one, it will be easier for them to raise fund two, to invest in more startups and put more money into the startups in the future. So they want you to succeed. That is like what you need to remember all the time. And then how is the tricky thing. Is like a good founder would be very eloquently talk to an investor to say, this is how I believe we're going to succeed. Are you with me or not? And then investors would like, okay, I admire what you're saying. I'll back you, So investors want to be impressed. They want to be wowed by you. They want to be like, oh my God, that level of passion, that level of drive, that, unique insight into that market that no other competitor is having. Wow, they're bang on trend. This is happening in the world. Consumers are moving towards that direction. They're seeing something that, because they see like, hundreds of decks every week, right? So like they see the patterns of things. And they study a lot they do a lot of, at least, Octopus, they do a lot of research on where the world is going in different verticals of technology, right? Because they invest in, consumer tech, fintech, biotech, and etc. And everyone in the teams, in the multiple teams, they are very keen to understand where the world is going around that particular area they invest in. So I'm having much more respect right now from the other side. Say, wow, this is actually very thorough. Again, data point of one, right? I haven't worked with other VCs, so I cannot talk about others. I can only talk about my investors at Bossa and the investors I'm working right now as a venture partner.
So then thinking about the founder journey of raising investment, usually we recognize we have 9 months runway. We need to start raising quite soon. We then realize, okay, we need to have 80 to 100 conversations to close our round. Mm-hmm. And we start with lower tier funds until we've perfected our pitch, and then we go for the top funds, the people that we'd love to be our investors. Yeah. In the, I suppose, minority circumstance, but in the chance that you have a choice of who you get to take money from, which I know most founders, it's just a case of it's such a slog. If someone offers you the money, take it. How do you go about vetting investors? How do you go about dating different types of investors?
Well, they're doing a lot of DD on you all the time. They're actually talking to a lot of people to do due diligence on you as a founder. That's part of the process. From, second meeting with an investor. They're already like, oh, I'm going to talk to someone who you co-founded another company, someone who was your boss in the previous company you worked at before you become an entrepreneur. Like, they're talking to someone who knows a lot about that particular, product. So they do a lot of due diligence. And I think founders should do the same, like talk to portfolio companies, founders. Well, I did that with Octopus, and I told them that I talked to two founders from their portfolio companies, and one more person who knew the person who was hiring me there, to know, about them. Are they a good fund? Do they help you? Is, this person like, great as much as, because I was very positive from all the conversations I had with them, right? But I didn't know the only way that I would have a confirmation was by doing my vetting, which was talking to the portfolio companies and people who knew the partner. So that's my recommendation to founders is do your DD. And you know, it's so tough when you really need money and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to lose everything if I don't get it. But if you get the wrong money, the wrong investor, you're going to die anyway. You know? I mean, I know it feels very kind of too strong to say that. Maybe it's just, you know, my experience. But it's not having the right investor in your cap table doesn't help you to raise money further if you need, right? Doesn't give you the optionality because if you need more money, you might not be able to. And you're going to suffer every 2 months in a board meeting, at least, because, you know, you didn't create a rapport with the investor you brought on board. So the radical thing to say is like, it's better that your company does not make it than bringing the wrong investor.
And I suppose you only really know that you had the wrong investors with hindsight.
No, that's the thing. A lot of times, yes, because the founder is very afraid of doing, you know, the due diligence on them.
So let's assume someone's raised their round already. They're listening to this conversation going like, that's all well and good when you go to raise. I did some DD on my investors, but maybe not as much as you're saying I should. They probably have an intuitive feeling of how compatible their investors are to their business. How are they then managing that relationship? Let's say it's maybe not as healthy as it could be, or people don't feel really connected with their investors. How are they approaching these board meetings? How are they approaching their communication?
So the first question I would ask is that, did you have a gut feeling that it could be problematic? Because a lot of the times we do not listen to our gut feeling. A lot of the times we're like, these are all the logical reasons I should say yes to this. And then when she hits the fan, you're like, oh, I had a gut feeling that could have been different. But yeah, of course, people change, and like you might be in a situation that you got a big fund to invest in you, and then the partner, you know, left, and somebody else went to the board. These are all about relationships, right? And my co-founder would be, you know, if you ever interview my co-founder, he would be able to tell you a lot about how he manages our board because he's brilliant at that. And I admire from afar. I was like, wow, you're kind of really good at this, right? So I learn a lot from him. But you need to have the conversations and the bouncing of what is the right decision to be made outside of the board meeting. And it's not politics. It's about building individual relationships with, you know, the individual investors. Like, let's go for coffee, let's go for dinner, let's talk about the future of, you know, whatever is the business you're making. Can I introduce you to someone that I think would be super beneficial to you? It's like, it's a relationship that you build with people. And again, I'm not saying that a lot of founders do it wrong, but I think it's on both sides of the investor and the founder to want to build a relationship outside of the board. And once you do that, once you bounce ideas, you kind of know each other, your board becomes much easier to handle, even when you have to make really tough decisions, you know, which, of course, triggers a lot of people. So, you know, conflicts comes when everyone is like, fuck it, shit is not going the way that we expected, right? And then, you know, stress levels go up, anxiety goes up, and then you end up having mad, crazy stories at board that we all know from founders in general, but, you know, a lot of founders talk about the war stories. So I think going back to relationships, I think we disregard the ongoing relationship with people.
The human side.
the human side of it. Totally disregard. Because it's business, because, that's what they want, and they're the money, we're the operators, we need to make it work. Like, level with them, like, even if it's your angel investors, right? Like, hey, I trust you, I need to talk to you about this, what do you think, Like, that kind of network can work if you work on that for both sides, investors and founders.
That's so helpful. Thank you. I'd love to switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
And understand more about you. And so the first thing I'd love to understand about you is what parts of David Bowie do you channel within you?
Everything. No. So this,
Obviously.
I borrowed from him, and now it's mine. No, what parts of David Bowie channel? Originality. I think what I admired on him most was twofold. One, he was unapologetically himself. Like, I didn't meet him as a human being, right? Like face to face. But everything that he portrayed to the world was so unapologetic. Was so like, this is me and take it or leave it. And this is how I'm going to create my songs. And it was very kind of inspired by Dada movement, which is kind of bonkers. A lot of stuff that he's done was very bonkers. Even from a lyrics perspective, sometimes it doesn't make sense, but it does because of the sound that he was creating and the people he was, surrounding himself with. So the unapologetic self, that's, what I try to channel in me. And the other element, which is really important, is the fact that he was not afraid of killing things when he got good at that. And that's something that I've been thinking a lot about recently. Is like, what if the key to creating new things in life is to give up what you're good at? And he did that. He killed Ziggy Stardust in their prime time because that's it. Done. I've done it. I'm bored. I'm going to do something else, and I'm going to start another persona. And, he had degrees of more success, less success in different, albums and personas that he created along his lifetime. But I think that kind of trust that if you give up what you're good at, you're probably going to stumble upon something that is much more magical. Wow.
The idea that creation comes from destruction.
Yes, exactly.
So where in your life at the moment do you feel that you are still acting apologetically?
Ooh. Very honestly, I think my new identity as a singer-songwriter, I'm not unapologetic enough. Like, not at all. I'm very afraid. I'm like, I have days that I wake up, I'm like, I'm going to paint half of my hair white. And I don't do that because I was like, oh my God, really? What about my other identity as an event? Should I go to Octopus Ventures office with like half a head white? Ooh, I don't know. Would it be fine? So that kind of, it's probably holding me back a little bit. And of course, I'm a baby, right? So I'm like, have been doing this for 2 years. So sometimes I feel that my voice is not good enough, my songs are not good enough. So I'm still quite, not unapologetic enough. I'm still apologetic.
What are you afraid of? You said you're still quite afraid.
That what I have created so far, songwriting wise, is still not good enough. Still not. still needs more iteration. You know, it's almost like the moment of the MVP of your startup. You're like, did I iterate it enough before I launch it? You know, you never know. At some point, you just need to put it out and see what happens, right? But I'm in that kind of phase right now. I was like, do I have good MVP enough to put it out? It's pretty shit and nobody's going to care, you know? And I'm going to be devastated with rejection. And then another side of me, the entrepreneurial side, is like, come on, artist Roberta. I've been there before. You can do this. But the artist Roberta is like, oh my God. Like, I never put anything so, you know, vulnerable out as a creation in my life. It's the first time. It's the most vulnerable I've ever been.
Why does it feel vulnerable?
Because the songs that I've been writing, they are melancholic. They're like highly emotional. They tell a story. And there are stories that are coming from inside of me that people usually don't see. They see my energizing beta, which is part of me as well, but they don't see this other side of, you know, quite fragile and highly emotional. I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm, you know, maybe people already see that and I don't know they do. What do you think?
I assume everyone has these two sides and people choose to show them or they don't. And I can't say I've seen it from you in the past, but I'd love to rewind a little bit back to a phrase you've said a couple of times, which is something's not good enough. Who is it not good enough for?
For me.
Where did the expectation of yourself come from?
My editor self.
The editor self.
My editor self. There's the artistic self and the editor. So yeah, there's like the artistic self is like, you know, oh my God, it's like I'm gonna put everything out and highly emotional, the kid in the park, you know. And then there's, you know, the adult, the editor is like the inner critic, like, really? Is it really good enough? Are you sure? I'm even changing the voice. Like, you sure it's good enough? Like the world out there, you know. And then she's like, oh my God, but it's like so good. But it's like, I was really feeling that. I was crying when I wrote that song. And then the editor's like, well, maybe you shouldn't show yourself crying to anyone because, you know, people are going to judge you. So yeah, that's, you know, I think everyone has that in their mind, right?
Whose judgment would feel the most cutting?
In what sense?
If you put it out, these melancholic songs that you wrote from this different part of yourself, and you put them out.
Such a good question. I think if I talk about external people, I would probably say my partner.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because, you know, maybe 2 years ago I would say my mom, because she's, you know, we didn't talk much about her, but yeah, she's been like, you know, my inspiration my whole life. The reason why I became a businesswoman, resilient, driven, and etc. is like, you know, had like, touch wood, luckily, like super amazing role model as I was growing up, and she's still like an amazing role model to me because of who she became nowadays. And I would say it would be her, but I think I healed that with her. I had a lot of therapy, and then eventually I said to her, look, this is how I feel. And we kind of, you know, she's like, okay, I won't be the judge anymore. You have to do whatever you want to do in your life. So yeah, so she's much less of that right now. But so I think, yeah, next in line is my partner.
Okay.
Don't tell this to him.
And
Sorry. You know that. He knows that. He probably knows that.
I'd like to respect your privacy of your
Yes.
partner, but given that it's International Women's Day, happy
Oh my
Women's
God,
Day.
that's true. Thank you.
I'd love
Wow, I've been so heads down with songwriting that I did not even realize that.
I'd love to talk about your relationship with your mum. Your partner very kindly told me that your mum was super driven, and I believe she was the first one in your family to get like a corporate job, which then inspired you and you followed suit. Can you talk about your relationship and how it's evolved over time? That's
Yeah.
what it sounds like.
So she, my mom's family were like super low, like working class in Brazil. And yeah, no one went to university and stuff. Like there was no money for that or not even consideration of that. Like, you know, you just, as a woman growing up, she was growing up in the 60s, right? And yeah, like there was no room for, you need to find a husband and be a housewife. So it's like, wow, work? Women working? No, that's not your role in society, and especially in the working class environment there. And yeah, and my mom was the first one who said, what? She told me that last time I went to Brazil. I said, but Mom, what made you actually go there and look for a job? Because like, was there something with your parents, right? With my grandpa and grandma. She said, no, I think I just wanted to buy my own stuff and I didn't want to depend on my dad to give me money to do that. It was so like, it was such a throwaway comment. Like, I just wanted to buy my stuff. Like, meaning I just wanted to be independent and look after my life. And then she went against, you know, all the odds. And that, you know, eventually she worked in like a large organization, worked there like for a long time. And that, you know, kind of growing up already in the environment where she's like different to all my aunts and even like the different role models that my cousins had from their mothers, right? It was very enlightening. It was like have like beautiful moments of, you know, in the morning, she's kind of getting ready to work and like, you know, 80s style of big, you know, shoulder pads and like lots of perfume and da-da-da. She was like, I'm gonna, you know, kill a lion today. You know, I'm gonna go and do stuff. And she divorced from my dad when I was 6. And again, something completely non-acceptable. Like what? You don't divorce here. Like you stay married, even though he cheated on her. Oh my God, my dad's gonna see that. But that's true. But you know, he's with his wife, his, you know, new wife, like since then. So he was definitely in love. But my mom was like, yeah, I'm gonna go and do my own thing. And that was really powerful, really powerful. I could see that there were no boundaries. No boundaries, you know? And like, and I think sometimes I don't realize that. The point is, a lot of people don't realize how much they can do in their lives and how far you can push the boundaries and throw yourself into new things. And I think I learned that from my mom, because I learned that everything is possible.
That's a magical lesson to take.
Yeah. And now she's like running marathons, traveling the world to run marathons. She went from like super workaholic career person to retiring and getting like depressed for like a whole year to like, okay, what I'm gonna do in my life? Now I'm gonna run a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. It's like a little bit Forrest Gump, right? I'm just gonna run.
Yeah.
And run. And suddenly she's like, she plays 3 hours of tennis every Saturday. She runs marathons. She exercises every day at the gym.
Wow. How old is she, if you don't mind me asking?
69.
I want to be that active as she
Right, me too.
And your partner very kindly said that this was something that he admired in you, this rebellious streak. He said, nothing lights your fire more than when someone says, you can't do that.
Yes. Oh, I'm gonna cry. That's so true. That's very kind of him.
And it sounds like that's an amazing thing that you've got from your mother.
Yeah.
How has your relationship changed now? Or from when you saw her, looking up to her and she was going to work when you were younger, to then you working in corporate and following her footsteps, and then moving here and starting startups, and now
Yeah,
changing.
she's been, very strong woman. So all the time she was very much like, this is what I think you should be doing. She convinced me to do computer science as university, because she was like, you have to do something. You're good at maths. Just do that, because, you're going to have a job. You're going to become independent. So there was a lot of, things that she kind of put on me as, hey, I know how to make you a better me, which all parents do, right? But that was good at a certain point, when I think I probably started to kind of break with that when I became an entrepreneur, and I was like, what are you doing? You're leaving your secure job to go and embark in something new, and like it was a little bit like too much for her from a like security perspective. But it's so funny that I tell this to her. It's like, you've done a lot of crazy shit in your life, and like you're saying to me that I should go for security. Like, that's not you. But again, parents want to make sure that they do whatever they want to do, they need to do for you to be a better themselves, right? So I think, recently it was the biggest step to go and say, actually, I'm going to pursue my artistic self. Because growing up, this chat of art world, there was always this image of the poor artist, you follow art. It's like, you're not gonna be independent, you're not gonna have a job, life's gonna be hard for you. So for her, it was like long conversations to say, Mom, I need your support. I can't, every time that I talk about singing, I cannot talk to you and you're like, are you sure you're doing that? Because it's just, I already have my very strong editor. I don't need another one to put more doubt in my brain, right? So, yeah. So now she's like, I'm just going to say this, but I won't. I was like, okay, don't. And she respects.
That's amazing. It's a very difficult conversation to have.
Yeah. It was like series of conversations and with my sister as well, like, hey, can you help with that? Because it's like, I need the boundaries. Otherwise, I won't be able to feel myself in this world of the artistic world.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to have one more question
Okay.
for you,
Okay.
which is, what feels crazy now?
What feels crazy now? Oh my God, in what sense?
You tell me.
What feels crazy now is that oh shit, I'm gonna get emotional. What feels crazy now is that I think I manifested where I am in my life at the moment. I have vivid memories of, situations that would happen. Like, even when I went on stage last year, one of my performances, I literally saw there in the audience exactly the picture that I had imagined in a manifestation exercise that I did 4 years ago. And it feels very crazy that I'm here in the present that was an aspiration of my past self. And I don't want to mess up with that. I really don't want to mess up with that. So, yeah.
I have all the confidence in the world that you're going to become even more electric, even more curious, even more alive than ever before. I can see it in your eyes.
Thank you.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You made me cry like 3 times.
You didn't cry at all.